at the scene in Cordova. Our crews have seen FBI and TBI agents going in and out of that house. The Shelby County Assessor's website lists this house as being owned by Lontrell Williams. That is the name of both Pooh Shiesty and his father. The rap star is in a halfway house right now after being released from federal.
Last night, April 1st, 2026, the FBI pulled up to Pooh Shiesty's family home in Cordova, Tennessee at 6 o'clock in the morning with flashbangs. Not a wellness check, not some local Memphis cops doing routine business. The Federal Bureau of Investigation showed up before the sun was fully up, set off flashbang grenades, and flooded that property with federal agents executing both a search warrant and an arrest warrant. That's the part that should have everybody paying attention, because the home is registered under the name Lontrell Williams, and that's both Pooh Shiesty's government name and his father's government name. So when the feds pulled up this morning, the question isn't just, is Pooh going back to prison? The real question is, who exactly did they come for and why? And when you start looking at everything that's been happening over the last few months, the social media activity, the parole officer drama, the snitch allegations Pooh was addressing publicly while still under federal supervision, the picture starts getting a lot more complicated than a simple raid. Because there are multiple angles here that could explain why the FBI was at that house this morning, and every single one of them spells trouble. Y'all need to hear this. Let me break it all the way down. To understand why this raid is as serious as it is, you need to understand exactly who Pooh Shiesty is and what kind of heat he was already carrying before a single Fed stepped foot on that property this morning. Pooh Shiesty, born Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr., came out of Memphis, Tennessee and shot to fame fast. We're talking one of the most explosive rap careers in recent memory. He signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 Records, dropped Back in Blood, and that record went multi-platinum, peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, and became one of the most recognizable rap records of the entire decade. He dropped his debut mixtape Shiesty Season in February 2021 and the streets went crazy. He was everywhere. But almost as fast as he came up, the feds came knocking. His legal trouble started in October 2020 in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. What started as a transaction, allegedly trying to acquire marijuana, codeine, and sneakers, turned into a shooting. A member of Pooh's crew pulled out a weapon, assaulted 2 victims, and Pooh was implicated in the whole situation. That same year, back in Memphis, he was inside a vehicle when another occupant discharged a firearm at a gas station. Then in May of 2001, he was accused of assaulting a victim with a firearm at the King of Diamonds strip club in Miami, a situation where $40,000 reportedly fell out of his lap during the altercation. Federal authorities stepped in, and when the feds step in, it's a different game entirely. He was indicted on charges including conspiracy to possess firearms in furtherance of violent crime, Hobbs Act robbery conspiracy, and discharging a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. The original sentence he was staring at? Up to life in prison. That's not an exaggeration. That's what was on the table. He took a plea deal in January 2022, pleaded guilty to conspiring to possess firearms in furtherance of crimes of violence and drug trafficking. In exchange, prosecutors dropped 3 charges, including the one carrying a possible life sentence. He was sentenced to 63 months, 5 years and 3 months in federal prison in April 2022. 3 years later, in October 2025, he walked out early. Good behavior, time served credits. All of that, his lawyer told Memphis News Network WMC that he was ready to get back to music. And for a minute, it looked like the comeback was real. He dropped FDO, First Day Out. That joint peaked at number 12 on the Hot 100 in January 2026. He became Billboard's first hip-hop Rookie of the Month. He was back. The industry was rocking with him. The fans were locked in. And then this morning happened. But here's where it gets crazy. And this is the part people are sleeping on. When Pooh walked out of that Pennsylvania federal prison in October 2025, he wasn't fully free. A lot of people don't understand how the federal system works, so let me break it down. He was placed into a residential reentry management program, supervised release. The Federal Bureau of Prisons had him listed under the RRM Dallas field office, with a projected full release date of April 11, 2026. That's not incarceration. RM Dallas is a federal reentry management office that oversees halfway houses and home confinement programs across its region. But what it means in practice is this. You are still the property of the federal government. You have rules, you have restrictions. You have a supervision officer, and if you violate the terms of that supervision, even something that seems minor, they can pull you back in faster than you can blink. Traditionally, being enrolled in that program means you cannot travel to another state. He was supposed to be in Dallas. That house that got raided this morning, that's in Cordova, Tennessee. That's Memphis. That's a whole different state. Now here's where I need you to pay attention, because this is where the dots start connecting. Despite being under federal supervision and technically restricted to Dallas, Pooh had been active. Social media posts, out and about shooting music videos. And it wasn't some secret, it was all public. He was posting this stuff for the world to see. But that's just the beginning, because the social media situation goes way deeper than just a few posts. In late 2025, Pooh pops up in a live stream with his close associate Ben Didon. And midstream, his parole officer calls him, on the live, and reportedly reprimands him for not being home. That clip went viral immediately. The internet ran with it. Jokes, memes, people saying he was about to catch a violation. Now at the time, nothing official came of it publicly. No violation was filed that we know of. But the feds don't need to file paperwork for you to know that they're watching. You go viral for your PO calling you during a live stream. You have now made yourself visible to every level of federal supervision. That is not a position you want to be in when your release date is still months away. But wait, it gets worse. Here's the piece that might actually be the most important, and I don't think people are connecting it to this raid yet. Just days before this raid went down, Pooh Shiesty went on social media to address something serious. Allegations that he snitched as part of his federal gun case. Now in hip-hop, those kinds of allegations can follow a man forever, and Pooh clearly felt like he needed to set the record straight publicly. So he recorded a video of himself going through the actual paperwork from his indictment, on camera, posted it for the world to see. He captioned it, "Traumatized, they don't know the half." In the video, he said they smacked up with more charges, thinking that Stott would break us or make us three of the most solid newsers you will ever see name on a piece of paper. Now here's what I need you to really sit with for a second. You are a man who is still under federal supervised release. You have not yet been fully discharged from the federal system. Your release date is April 11th. It hasn't even hit yet. And you are going on social media publicly discussing your federal case and your co-defendants and broadcasting it to millions of people. That is not a move you make when you're trying to stay off the federal government's radar. That is the kind of move that makes your supervision officer pick up the phone. That is the kind of move that makes prosecutors pay attention. Because anything you say publicly, anything you put online, is now part of the record. They don't even need a warrant to access your Instagram. You posted it yourself. And now, just days after that video goes up, the FBI is at your family home with flashbangs at 6 in the morning. Now I'm not saying that's definitely the direct cause, but on that timing, you cannot tell me that's a coincidence. Now here's where people need to start connecting the dots, because this raid raises more questions than it answers. And one of the biggest questions is this: is Pooh even the one they came for? Let me lay this out like a detective, because the details matter here. The home is a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom property in Cordova, a Memphis suburb. It was purchased in April 2234 for $656,500. And it is listed on the Shelby County Assessor's website under the name Lontrell Donnell Williams, a name that both Pooh Shiesty and his father, Lontrell Williams Sr., share. That is not a minor detail. That is potentially the entire story. Think about it from the federal government's perspective. If you are investigating Lontrell Williams Sr., the father, for whatever reason, and the home is registered under that shared name, you go to that address. The warrant says Lontrell Williams. Doesn't necessarily mean you're coming for the rapper. Could be the dad caught a case. Could be there's financial activity connected to that address that triggered an investigation. Could be that the property itself became a focal point for something the father was involved in. And here's what makes this even more complicated. Pooh was supposed to be in Dallas. If the FBI was coming specifically for Pooh, and they knew he was on re-entry supervision in Dallas, why would they execute the warrant at the Memphis house? Either they had reason to believe he was there when he wasn't supposed to be, which itself is a violation, or the warrant wasn't primarily about Pooh at all. It was about that address, that property, and whoever in that household is connected to whatever they're investigating. There's also the re-entry violation angle to consider seriously. Federal records show Pooh was supposed to be in Dallas until April 11th. If he was physically in that Memphis house and FBI agents don't show up with flashbangs at a house they expect to be empty, then his presence there alone could trigger a supervised release violation. That's before we even get into whatever the substance of the investigation is. A supervised release violation on a federal firearms conviction is no joke. They can send you right back to finish the remainder of the original sentence, plus stack new time on top. And then there's the angle that I think deserves serious attention: the online activity. Because when you're on federal supervised release, you are not living a private citizen's life. Your supervision officer has access to everything. Your social media is monitored. Your location is monitored. Your communications are subject to scrutiny. When Pooh posted that video going through his indictment paperwork and publicly discussing his co-defendants, while still technically under federal supervision, that's not just a social media moment. That's potentially an evidentiary moment. Depending on what he said and how he said it, that could be framed as tampering, it could be framed as violating terms of his supervision, or it could have simply flagged his case for renewed attention from the prosecution side. The internet moves fast and forgets faster. The federal government does neither. So where are we right now? Here's the current state of play, keeping it 100. As of this morning, there has been no official confirmation of who was arrested. FBI confirmed they executed both a search warrant and an arrest warrant at the property. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation worked alongside federal agents during the operation. Flashbangs were used. Agents were going in and out of the home for hours, and neither Pooh Shiesty nor his family have released any public statement. His team is silent. 1017 Records is silent. His lawyer hasn't spoken. Nobody has confirmed whether Pooh himself was even in that house when the agents came through. And that silence tells you something. Because when it's a misunderstanding, like back in January of 22/6 when social media went crazy claiming he was rearrested and his label came out within hours to set the record straight, people speak up fast. His label contacted outlets directly. DJ Academics clarified. Pooh himself commented publicly saying he was not in jail. That whole situation was resolved within a news cycle because the answer was simple and his team could explain it. This time, crickets. No statement, no clarification, no, it's not what it looks like from his management. That is a very different energy than the January situation. And the difference in energy tells you that either the situation is genuinely complicated enough that they can't explain it away quickly, or the legal exposure is serious enough that his attorneys have told everyone to keep their mouths shut. Because when lawyers get involved and tell you to say nothing, you say nothing. And let's talk about the timing one more time because this is something that should genuinely shock people. His full release date from federal supervision was April 11th, 2026. Today is April 1st. That is 10 days away from being completely done with the federal government, done with supervision, done with all of it. And the FBI shows up with flashbangs and a federal arrest warrant. You understand what that means? After everything, the plea deal, the 3+ years in a Pennsylvania federal prison, the reentry program, the supervised release, he was 10 days from the finish line. 10 days from being able to live his life without checking in with a federal officer. And now we're potentially looking at a situation where he goes back in. The hip-hop community is already reacting. The streets are talking. Social media has been on fire since the news broke this morning. People are drawing comparisons, debating whether this was targeted, asking whether his social media posts played a role, wondering about his father, questioning whether the feds ever really intended to let him walk free without another look. And the bigger irony? The song he dropped celebrating his first day out, FDO, peaked at number 12 on the Hot 100. The record was literally called First Day Out. And now people online are already joking about whether FDO Part 2 Inches is on the way. Except this time, nobody's laughing the way they were in January, because this time it's real federal agents at a real address with a real warrant. Let me zoom out for a second, because this situation is bigger than just Pooh Shiesty. This is a pattern. And if you follow hip-hop culture seriously, you know exactly what pattern I'm talking about. The federal government does not forget. That is the single most important thing you need to take away from this entire conversation. Local cases, state cases, those can get dropped, those can get resolved, those can get handled in ways that let people move on. But when the feds get involved in your life, they don't just close a file and walk away. They build files, they maintain surveillance, they watch social media, they track movement, they monitor communications. And when someone on their radar makes a mistake, or what they perceive as a mistake, they move. Pooh Shiesty had multiple red flags stacking up in plain view. The viral parole officer phone call, the social media post showing him out of state when he was supposed to be in Dallas, the public video addressing his co-defendants and his federal case. None of those things individually necessarily ends a man, but all of them together, all of them on the record, all of them public, all of them happening while he's still under federal supervision. That is a profile being built in real time. And the feds are patient. They wait, they watch. And then one morning at 6 a.m., they pull up with flashbangs. And then there's the question of his father. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not accusing Lontrell Williams Sr. of anything because we don't have that information yet. But the fact that the feds obtained a warrant for a property registered under a shared family name, and that we genuinely do not know who the target of that arrest warrant is, opens up a lane of conversation that cannot be ignored. It is entirely possible that Pooh's father has been under some form of investigation that has nothing to do with Pooh directly, and Pooh just happened to be connected to that address. That would be a completely different kind of tragedy. A man does his time, comes home, tries to rebuild, and then gets swept up because of what's happening in his father's orbit. We've seen that play out before. We've seen family members become collateral in federal investigations. We've seen shared addresses turn into shared exposure under federal law. And when the government executes a warrant at a family home, everyone in that household becomes relevant to the investigation, whether they're the target or not. What this also highlights is something the culture needs to talk about more honestly: the post-release vulnerability of artists who have federal cases. When you come home from a federal bid, you are not free in the way that word normally means. You are under a microscope. Every move you make publicly, especially on social media, is being observed by people whose job it is to look for reasons to bring you back in. The temptation to reclaim your identity, to speak on your situation, to address allegations, to get back on social media and show the world you're alive and thriving, that temptation is completely human, but it is also the exact thing that can get you sent back. Pooh Shiesty had everything to lose and arguably did not move like it. Or maybe he did move carefully and something bigger than him got him caught up regardless. We don't fully know yet. But what we do know is this: 10 days before his federal supervision was set to end, the FBI pulled up to his family home in the dark with flashbangs and federal warrants. That is not a situation you walk away from easily. That is not something his lawyers can clarify with a quick tweet. This is serious. This is real. And depending on what comes out over the next 24 to 48 hours, whether this is his case, his father's case, a supervision violation, a new investigation, or some combination of all of the above, Pooh Shiesty's future in music and in freedom is genuinely uncertain right now. Y'all already know I'm going to be on this story the second more information drops. The moment we get confirmation on who was arrested, what the charges are, and whether Pooh himself is in custody, I'm breaking it down immediately. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, because this is only the beginning of this story. Drop in the comments, do you think this is about Pooh directly, or do you think his dad might be the real target here? And do you think posting that video going through his indictment papers while still on federal supervision played a role in bringing the heat back? I want to hear what y'all think. Stay locked in. This ain't over. Not even close.